Men like you are not leaders. You are intruders. Step away before you embarrass yourself. The sentence shot down the hallway like a bullet, cruel and deliberate. A white manager stood blocking the glass doors to the executive conference room, her voice slicing the air so everyone could hear. One hand gripped a black leather bag, the other pointed like a weapon at the black man who had dared to walk toward the meeting. Beside her, a security guard leaned in close, body tense, ready to enforce her words. Around them, the corridor was pristine and sterile, lined with steel panels and fluorescent light that made the confrontation impossible to ignore. The sound carried. From a distance, two employees froze mid-step. One raised her phone, recording with hesitant fingers. The red light glowed like a silent witness. Another whispered under her breath, "He does not look like an executive," the doubt spreading faster than truth ever could. The man at the center of the storm did not move. His arms crossed over his chest, jaw set, eyes fixed on hers. He was dressed simply, denim over a clean white shirt, no badge, no entourage. He looked like someone who had slipped onto the wrong floor. That was exactly what she wanted the crowd to believe. But his silence was not weakness. It was a choice. A pause sharpened by years of enduring the same script, rehearsed in countless rooms, spoken by different mouths but always aimed at him. He had been told he did not belong when he opened his first bank account. He had been told to wait outside when applying for loans, even while offering triple the collateral. He had been told to sit down, to prove himself, to justify his presence. Again and again, the same insult dressed in new clothes. Now, in this hallway of glass and echoes, he heard it once more. "Men like you are not leaders." The words dripped with certainty, with the smugness of someone convinced they knew the boundaries of power. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to him. The manager's heels struck the tile as she stepped forward, closing the space between them. Each click sounded like a gavel in a courtroom. "This meeting is reserved for executives only. Do not force me to call additional security," she warned, her tone rising, feeding on the silence of the bystanders. Her eyes narrowed, lips pulled tight into a smile meant to humiliate. The security guard shifted, arms folding, muscles flexing, his presence reinforcing the lie. To the casual eye, the scene looked settled, authority on one side, an outsider on the other. But the truth was brewing beneath his stillness. The black man's silence carried the weight of every insult he had survived, every threshold he had crossed, every door once slammed in his face that he had later bought. He did not need to shout. He did not need to defend. Power, real power, waits until the exact moment to strike. And as the camera light blinked, as whispers turned into murmurs, the air in the corridor thickened. The storm was only beginning. The manager's words still echoed against the glass walls when the silence finally broke. She straightened her blazer as if sealing her own authority, then added with sharpened venom, "Step away from this door. This floor is for real decision-makers, not for men like you." Her voice did not falter. It carried through the corridor like a public announcement, designed not only to stop him but to shame him. The black man did not shift. He stood steady, denim jacket draped over his frame, the clean white shirt beneath catching the sterile glare of the overhead lights. His shoes were simple, polished but unremarkable. Nothing about his appearance screamed wealth or authority. That was intentional. He had arrived without an entourage, without a designer briefcase, without a badge. He came as he was, fully aware that the absence of markers would invite judgment. Behind the manager, the security guard cleared his throat. His stance widened, palms brushing the belt at his waist, sending a signal that he was ready to act. Two junior employees lingered by the elevator, whispering, eyes darting between the confrontation and their glowing phone screens. One raised her device higher, capturing the scene with a nervous hand. The red light glowed steady now, unwavering, like a recording angel determined to keep the truth. The manager smirked at the sight. "Go ahead, film him. Let everyone see the kind of stunt people like him try to pull." Her words dripped with contempt, her tone rising with the confidence of someone who thought the crowd would follow. A sharp laugh from one of the junior employees cut the air. The other hesitated, clearly uncomfortable but too afraid to speak. The black man remained calm. His eyes scanned the scene, the guard looming, the The manager's finger still pointed like a verdict, the phones capturing every angle. His silence unsettled her more than protest ever could. She wanted anger. She wanted him to plead, to defend himself, to fit the stereotype she had already drawn in her mind. Instead, he gave her nothing. Her cheeks flushed. You are holding up executives with real responsibilities. There is a $1,200 million deal being decided in this room, and you are standing in the way. She did not realize the irony in her statement. The words, meant to diminish him, only brushed against the truth that she could not fathom. For a moment, the fluorescent lights seemed to hum louder. The hallway thickened with tension. Even the security guard's eyes flickered with uncertainty, caught between enforcing an order and questioning its foundation. The black man's jaw tightened. Memories rose unbidden, sharp and familiar. At 23, he had stood outside a bank where his request was dismissed because men like you are high risk. At 26, he had offered more than enough collateral, only to be told his profile did not match the institution. The faces had changed, the suits had changed, but the lines were always the same. He carried those words like scars, not visible but etched into every boardroom battle, every acquisition, every billion-dollar victory. Now here he was again, accused of trespassing in a place where his signature outweighed every voice inside. He drew a slow breath, still not speaking. The storm was building. Each insult was fuel, each whisper kindling. And when the moment came, his response would not be loud, it would be final. The manager shifted her weight, as if the silence itself had become unbearable. She leaned closer, her perfume sharp and overbearing in the sterile hallway, and hissed, "Do you really think you can stand among executives dressed like that? Men who belong here wear power on their sleeves. You wear failure." The words landed like stones thrown at glass. A few people nearby winced. One of the junior employees lowered her phone slightly, her conscience wrestling with fear. The other smirked, whispering to a colleague, "He looks more like maintenance than management." Their laughter was low but cutting, the kind designed to wound without leaving a mark on their own skin. The black man did not respond. His gaze stayed steady, piercing through the mockery. His silence was a fortress, and yet the manager mistook it for weakness. She straightened, emboldened by her own performance. "Security!" she barked, snapping her fingers without even looking at the guard. "Escort this man downstairs. He does not belong on this floor." The guard hesitated. His eyes flicked from her to the man standing calm and immovable. Something about the way the man held his ground, shoulders squared, breathing even, eyes unwavering, felt out of place for someone accused of trespassing. Still, duty tugged at him. He shifted his stance forward. It was then that a voice from the far end of the hall rose, hesitant but clear. "Are you sure about that?" All eyes turned. A young intern, clutching a tablet to her chest, stepped forward. She was barely out of college, her ID badge swinging nervously as she moved. I saw his name earlier, on the clearance list." Her voice trembled, but the words carried weight. The manager spun on her heel, eyes blazing. "Stay out of this if you value your job." That list was for real executives, not for imposters. The intern froze, color draining from her face. But the damage was done. Murmurs spread down the hall like wildfire. A few heads nodded, remembering glimpses of the same name in emails or on schedules. The manager pressed forward, desperate to regain control. She snatched at the black man's temporary badge, ripping it from his chest and holding it up like evidence. "This is nothing but a prop. You are not an executive. You are a distraction." With a sharp flick of her wrist, she tossed the badge onto the floor. The sound of plastic hitting tile cracked through the silence like a gavel. For the first time, the black man moved. He bent slowly, not to retrieve the badge, but to rest his hand on the tablet case he carried. His eyes lifted, calm but unyielding, and the smallest curve of a smile brushed his lips. It was not amusement. It was inevitability. The security guard stepped forward again, but hesitation weighed his every move. He had seen arrogance before, but this felt different. This man did not flinch, did not plead, did not carry himself like someone on borrowed ground. The young intern whispered to no one in particular, "Why does it feel like we are the ones making a mistake?" Her words, though soft, struck deeper than any shout. The hallway quieted again, the tension stretching thin as glass before it shatters. The manager laughed, brittle and loud, trying to mask the crack in her authority. "Enough of this theater. You are wasting everyone's time. Men like you never last in these halls." But the black man's silence told another story, one she was about to hear in full. The black man finally shifted, his movements deliberate and measured. He bent down, picked up the discarded badge from the polished tile floor, and placed it gently on a nearby table. His eyes never left the manager's face. The silence was not emptiness. It was weight. It pressed against the walls. It made the fluorescent lights buzz louder. It forced every witness to lean closer without realizing it. The manager misread it. To her, silence meant submission. She mistook composure for fear. She crossed her arms, her lips curving into a cruel smile. "You see? No words, no defense. That is what happens when you do not belong. Security, remove him now." Her tone was smug, her authority declared like scripture. The guard stepped closer, but his steps were slow, uncertain. He looked at the man again, then at the growing cluster of employees who had gathered at the end of the hall. A few phones were raised, the red recording lights multiplying. The truth was no longer confined to this corridor. It was spilling outward into every device, every potential feed, every digital witness waiting to share. The black man remained still, arms folded once again across his chest. His jaw tightened, but not with anger. It was patience, sharpened by decades. He had learned long ago that words hurled in fury only fed the very prejudice that tried to erase him. Patience, on the other hand, was a weapon. The manager's smirk widened. "Why so quiet?" she taunted. "Because you know I am right? Because you know that this room, this company, this deal is bigger than you?" She leaned forward, her voice dripping venom. "People like you clean up after the meeting. You do not walk into it." The insult cracked like thunder. Gasps rippled down the corridor. Even those who had doubted him flinched at the naked cruelty of her words. The young intern who had spoken earlier bit her lip hard, her eyes glistening, her tablet clutched so tight her knuckles turned white. The black man did not flinch. He inhaled slowly, then exhaled with the calm of someone who had stood at thresholds like this too many times before. He had been told he did not belong in banks. He had been told he did not belong in hotels. He had been told he did not belong in airplanes. And each time, he had left with more than he arrived. He did not need to remind himself who he was. He only needed to let the room reveal itself. The guard's hand hovered near his radio, torn between duty and doubt. The whispers grew louder. Someone muttered, "This feels wrong." Another added, "She is going too far." Phones angled higher, recording not just an argument but a moment charged with history, the kind of moment that does not fade once captured. The black man finally tilted his head, his voice quiet but steady. "Are you finished?" The question was not asked with defiance. It was delivered with the calm of a man who knew he held the final word. The manager blinked, startled by the sound of his voice, then quickly recovered. "Finished?" she scoffed. "No, I am just beginning. If you do not leave, I will make sure you never set foot in this building again." The man's gaze did not waver. His silence returned, heavier now, like the calm before lightning. And though no one else knew it yet, the storm was about to break. The hallway no longer felt like an ordinary office corridor. It had become a stage. Every word spoken by the manager now echoed against the glass and steel like a public trial. Every gesture was judged by the crowd that had quietly gathered, their phones raised, their whispers carrying tension like static before a storm. The black man stood in the center, unmoved. His silence had become louder than her shouting, his stillness more commanding than her frantic gestures. He did not have to raise his voice to be noticed. He only had to exist, and in that existence, every prejudice around him was laid bare. The young intern shifted her weight, unable to keep still. She looked down at her tablet, fingers trembling, then looked back up. Her voice cracked slightly, but it carried across the tense air. "I saw his name," she said. "It was on the clearance list this morning. I entered it myself." Gasps rippled. Heads turned. The manager whipped around, her face flashing red. "You will regret that," she snapped. "Do you think one line of code changes the truth? He is not one of us. That badge was a mistake, and so is your mouth." And the intern's chest rose and fell, but she did not back away. She held her ground with quiet defiance. It was not a mistake. The security guard's eyes darted between the two women, then back to the man who still had not moved. His hesitation grew heavier. He could feel the phones recording, feel the eyes of strangers judging his every decision. One wrong move and his face would be broadcast across 1,000 screens. A murmur cut through the back of the hall. A middle-aged employee, his suit slightly rumpled, whispered to his colleague, "I recognize him. I have seen his face before. In an article. Something about Forbes." The colleague nodded uncertainly, the seed of doubt spreading quickly. The manager noticed the shift. Her voice rose, desperate to seize control. "Enough of this circus. He does not belong here. He is wasting time, and this company will not tolerate fraud." She jabbed her finger toward him once more, her tone dripping with venom. "Get him out now." The guard took one slow step forward, but the weight in the air stopped him. He looked again at the black man, who met his gaze with unflinching calm. Something in that look unsettled him. It was not the gaze of a man caught trespassing. It was the gaze of a man who had already decided the outcome. The crowd shifted. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to soft protests. "This feels wrong. He has not even spoken. Why is she pushing this so hard?" The tide of perception was moving, and the manager could feel it slipping away. She snapped her head toward the intern again. "You! Put that tablet away before I have you escorted out with him." The intern did not move. Her grip tightened. Her silence was its own rebellion. The black man finally uncrossed his arms. His movements were slow, deliberate, precise. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. With a single tap, the screen glowed. He lifted it to his ear, his eyes never leaving hers. "Activate protocol," he said, his tone steady, almost gentle. The words were not meant for her, but they cut through the air like a blade. "Confirm my clearance. Confirm ownership of this deal room." The guard froze. The intern's eyes widened. The phones capturing the moment zoomed closer. The silence that followed was thick, unbroken, waiting. For the first time, the manager's smirk faltered. She blinked, her confidence cracking at the edges. The storm she had unleashed was no longer hers to command. It was his, and it was only beginning to break. The phone pressed against his ear glowed with quiet authority. His voice carried no strain, no anger, only the certainty of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. "Confirm clearance. Confirm ownership." The manager scoffed loudly, trying to cover the quiver in her breath. "Ownership?" she sneered, raising her voice so the corridor could hear. "This man is delusional. He is not an executive. He is an intruder." I said, "Remove him." The guard shifted again, but the hesitation in his eyes betrayed him. He was listening now, not just to the manager, but to the tone of the man on the phone, calm, commanding, grounded in a kind of power that uniforms and access cards could not grant. From the other end of the hall, another voice rose. A guest, visiting the building for a separate appointment, lifted her phone and spoke louder than she had intended. "Why does he sound like the one in charge?" Heads turned. Her words landed like a spark on dry wood. Murmurs rippled again, questioning, doubting the manager's story. The manager's face flushed crimson. She took a sharp step forward and struck her hand against the glass door of the conference room. "Inside this room are leaders negotiating a $1,200 million deal. He is not one of them. He is nothing. And you are all fools if you think otherwise." But her words faltered as the man lowered his phone slightly. The device's speaker was still active, and a clear voice came through. "System protocol engaged. Clearance for Executive Carter confirmed. Ownership level verified." The automated tone was clinical, undeniable, and it cut through the corridor like a verdict. A stunned silence followed. The crowd froze. The intern gasped. The manager blinked rapidly, her lips parting without sound. Even the guard's shoulders slumped slightly as if the ground had shifted under his feet. The black man did not smile. He did not need to. His expression was steady, his silence carrying more weight than any boast. The manager scrambled, her voice trembling as she tried to rebuild her authority. That system must have been hacked. Do not believe it. People like him manipulate, deceive." The intern interrupted, her voice stronger than before. "No, I entered that clearance myself. It is real. He is real." The young woman's words carried conviction now, and the cameras caught every syllable. The crowd leaned in. The truth was no longer a whisper. It was spreading, undeniable. The manager's composure cracked further. She turned on the intern, eyes blazing. "You are finished. You are fired on the spot. Do you hear me?" But before she could press further, the man's voice cut in quiet, even commanding. "You do not have that authority." The corridor fell into a hush. Every eye swung back to him. His gaze never wavered. His words had not been loud, but they landed with the force of a gavel. The manager's mouth opened, then closed. Her authority, once sharp and unquestioned, was slipping like sand through her fingers. The phones recorded, the witnesses murmured. The guard hesitated. Power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. The black man lowered his phone completely, sliding it back into his pocket with deliberate calm. The silence he carried now was no longer defensive. It was declarative. It said, without words, "This is my ground." The storm was no longer gathering. It was here, and the first strike of thunder had already landed. The air in the corridor was no longer neutral. It was charged, brittle, ready to break. Every phone raised in the crowd captured the tension. Every pair of eyes waited for what would come next. The manager, desperate to reclaim control, lunged forward and snatched the badge from the intern's trembling hands. Her nails scraped against the plastic as she held it up high, her face twisted with scorn. "This means nothing," she shouted. "Anyone can print a name on a badge. Anyone can fake a clearance screen. This man is not who you think he island. He is a fraud." Her voice cracked as she tried to summon authority, but it sounded shrill, forced, like a curtain fraying at the edges. The crowd stirred uneasily. Several people whispered at once. Why would the system confirm him? Why would she sound so desperate if she was right? Doubt spread, feeding the silence that now wrapped around the black man like armor. The guard finally stepped closer. His boots struck the tile with weight, but not certainty. His radio crackled faintly at his side, waiting for the command he was not sure he wanted to give. He looked into the black man's eyes again, and the calm there unsettled him. It was not the calm of a trespasser. It was the calm of someone who had been through this 100 times and had already chosen victory. The manager shoved the badge into the guard's chest. "Lock it away. Evidence. He will not get it back until the police confirm his identity." Gasps erupted. "That is theft," a voice cried from the back. "You cannot just take his property." Another phone lifted higher, the red light gleaming like a beacon. The moment had tipped into something bigger than a workplace dispute. It had become a public scandal unfolding in real time. The black man did not move. He did not reach for the badge. He did not argue. He did not even flinch. He simply watched as the guard hesitated, the badge hovering in his grip like a hot coal. Then came the breaking point. The manager's voice dropped lower, bitter and venomous, each word soaked in prejudice. "People like you always think you can buy your way in, but no matter how much money you wave around, you will never belong in a room like this." The silence that followed was thunderous. The insult was not hidden behind protocol or policy. It was raw, naked, unmistakable. Phones caught every syllable. Gasps turned into shouts. Did she just say that? Unbelievable. This is racism, plain and simple. The intern stepped forward, her voice shaking but defiant. "Stop it. I will not stand by and watch this." She looked directly at the black man, her eyes filled with something close to apology. "Your name is in the system. I saw it. You belong here." The manager whipped around, face red with fury. "You are done. Do you hear me? Done." She raised her voice higher, nearly screaming, "Security! Throw them both out!" But the guard did not move. His jaw clenched. His eyes darted to the phone's recording, to the crowd now buzzing with outrage. He knew that a single wrong move would haunt him forever. And in the middle of it all, the black man finally lifted his chin. His silence was not submission. It was preparation. The storm had reached its peak, and everyone could feel it pressing against their chests, waiting for him to release the first strike. He looked at the manager, his voice low but clear. "You just made the worst mistake of your career." The crowd froze. The words were not loud, but they hit harder than any shout. They rang in the corridor like a prophecy, undeniable and irreversible. The manager blinked, her mouth suddenly dry. She opened her lips to respond, but no sound came. For the first time, it was not her voice that filled the room. It was his. The manager's face tightened, but before she could recover, the black man raised his phone once more. His voice was steady, calm, and deliberate. "Log this moment. Timestamp every word. Begin internal escalation protocol." On the other end, a crisp voice responded through the speaker, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Protocol engaged. Recording active. Do you want verification against the executive registry?" The crowd stirred. The sound of an assistant's voice echoing through the sterile hallway shattered the illusion the manager had built. This was no intruder fumbling with excuses. This was someone with a system at his command. The manager stepped forward, forcing a laugh that carried no warmth. "Do not be fooled. That is nothing but a staged call. He could be talking to anyone. Do you really think someone like him has authority here?" Her words tried to steady the ground under her feet, but each syllable rang hollow. The black man did not respond to her. He spoke again into the phone. "Verify access to the $1,200 million deal room. Confirm lead negotiator status." There was a pause. Then the assistant's voice rang out again. "Confirmed. Lead negotiator Carter registered. Authority level. Controlling partner." The effect was immediate. The guard froze in place. The intern gasped, pressing the tablet against her chest like proof she had been right all along. Murmurs erupted from the witnesses. "Did you hear that? Controlling partner? That means he runs the deal." The manager's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She reached for anger, the last weapon she had left. "No, no, this cannot be true. This is a trick. He hacked the system. But the crowd no longer believed her. A guest at the far end of the hall, his suit immaculate, lifted his voice. "I recognize him. He was on the cover of Business Monthly last year. The Merger King. That is him." All eyes turned back to the man in denim and white, standing calm and composed while chaos swirled around him. He had not raised his voice once. He had not pushed, begged, or demanded. Yet the balance of power had shifted completely, drawn to him like gravity. The guard lowered the badge he had been holding, his shoulders sagging. He glanced at the manager, then back at the man. "If what they are saying is true, we may be the ones out of line." His voice was quiet, but the phones captured it, amplifying his doubt for every viewer who would later see the video. The manager snapped, her voice cracking with desperation. "Do not listen to him. Do not listen to any of them. This man is a fraud. He is nothing." The black man finally lowered his phone. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and final. "You called me nothing, but this deal does not move without me. Remember that." The silence that followed was deafening. It was not the silence of weakness. It was the silence of verdict. The crowd knew it. The intern knew it. Even the guard knew it. Only the manager refused to accept it, clinging to an authority that had already slipped away. And as the phones continued to record, the truth of who he was began to eclipse every lie she had tried to weave. The storm was no longer building, it was breaking, and the first wave had already swept the floor from under her feet. The weight of the revelation hung heavy in the corridor. No one spoke. Every phone camera caught the stillness. Every pair of eyes locked on the black man who had just shattered the illusion of power with a few quiet words. He stepped forward, no rush, no aggression, only certainty. His shoes tapped lightly against the tile, each sound echoing like a drumbeat of inevitability. He stopped just short of the manager, his gaze steady, unwavering. "You wanted proof," he said. His voice was low but carried through the space. "Here at Island, I am the controlling partner of this $1,200 million deal. Every executive in that room answers to me." Gasps broke the silence. The intern covered her mouth, her eyes wide. The guard froze, his hands slack at his sides, the badge still dangling from his fingers. Witnesses murmured in disbelief, their doubt turning into awe. The manager staggered back a step, her face pale beneath the harsh fluorescent light. "No, that is not possible. People like you—" She stopped herself, realizing too late that the words would only deepen the wound she had already carved. Her mouth opened again, but nothing came out. The black man did not give her the satisfaction of finishing. He turned slightly, speaking not only to her but to everyone gathered. "This meeting exists because of me. This building runs on contracts I signed. This deal moves only when I say it moves. And you tried to push me out of my own room." The crowd stirred, their whispers rising into a low chorus. "He owns it. He is the one." She had no idea. The tide had shifted completely. The phones that once captured humiliation were now documenting revelation. The intern stepped closer, her voice steady now. "I told you. His clearance was real. He belongs here." Her words no longer trembled. They were anchored in the truth the entire hall could see. The guard's shoulders sagged as he turned toward the manager. His voice was quiet but final. "Ma'am, I think you just made a very big mistake." The black man did not look at her again. He simply straightened, his presence filling the hallway like thunder without sound. Power did not need to roar. It only needed to be recognized. And in that moment, every witness knew the truth. He was not just part of the meeting. He was the meeting, and nothing could begin without him. The corridor erupted into a storm of whispers, phones raised higher, faces shifting from doubt to shock. The young intern's words echoed in their ears, and the manager's denial now looked less like authority and more like desperation. The black man stood perfectly still, but the silence around him no longer belonged to the manager. It belonged to him. He had not raised his voice, had not demanded attention, yet every witness now hung on his every movement. The guard lowered his eyes, unwilling to meet the man's gaze. He muttered to himself, but loud enough for the crowd to hear. He is the one in charge. She has been wrong from the start. That single admission cracked the dam. Gasps and murmurs rolled down the hall. One witness said, "This is going online right now." Another whispered, "That woman's career is over." The red lights of the phones blinked like a constellation, every angle recording the downfall of the manager who had mistaken prejudice for power. The manager backed away a step, her heels clicking awkwardly against the tile. She tried to recover, raising her chin high, her voice trembling but defiant. "No, you are all being manipulated. He cannot be who he says he island men like him lie. That is what they do." Her words landed flat. The intern spoke again, louder this time. "I saw his clearance this morning. It was not a lie. You ignored the truth because you did not want to see it." The courage in her tone drew nods from the crowd. Even the guard, once hesitant, now stood firmly beside the truth. The black man finally shifted his weight, his eyes locking on the manager. He did not need to shout. His words came out calm, precise, like a judge delivering a verdict. "You tried to erase me from a room I built. You tried to strip me of authority that was never yours to give or take. That mistake will not be forgotten." The crowd froze. The words carried finality, not threat. A ripple of awe swept through the witnesses, many of whom had once doubted him only minutes ago. The manager's breath grew shallow. Her hands shook as she clutched the stolen badge, the plastic trembling between her fingers. For the first time, she looked smaller than the role she had tried to play. The black man's gaze did not waver. He turned slightly toward the crowd, his presence filling the corridor without effort. In that moment, no one questioned who held the real power. Every camera captured the same truth. The balance of the room had shifted completely. The manager no longer commanded fear. The black CEO commanded respect. The black man drew a measured breath, then spoke with quiet authority. "Effective immediately, revoke her clearance. She will not enter another meeting under my contracts." The phones caught every word. Gasps spread like wildfire. The intern's eyes widened, realizing the weight of what had just been said. The guard froze, then slowly stepped back, no longer standing at the manager's side. From his pocket, the man tapped his phone once. The line connected, and a voice came through crisp and official. "Authorization received. Clearance revoked. Manager account terminated." The manager's badge beeped, then glowed red. She held it up in disbelief, pressing it against the scanner on the wall, but the light flashed denial. Once, twice. Then a tone sounded sharp and final. "Access denied." Her face drained of color. The same hands that had pointed with such arrogance now trembled. The crowd murmured louder, some whispering, some openly celebrating. "She is done." He just ended her career. The black man stood still, not triumphant, not boastful, only resolute. His silence after the command was louder than any outburst could have been. The corridor, once ruled by the manager's voice, now belonged entirely to him. The manager stood frozen, her badge useless in her trembling hand. The guard stepped aside, no longer her shield, his eyes lowered in quiet recognition of who truly held authority. The intern lifted her tablet higher, her voice steady now. "Everyone can see the truth. He belongs here. He always did." "Oh." The black man turned slowly, addressing not just the manager, but the witnesses, the cameras, and the unseen thousands who would soon watch. His words were calm, measured, deliberate. "Power is not in the voice that shouts the loudest. Power is in the silence that ends the shouting. You tried to block me from a door I own. That was your last mistake." A hush fell. Then came the first clap, soft, hesitant from one of the guests. Another followed, louder. Within seconds, the hallway pulsed with applause. Phones recorded every sound, every face, every moment of humiliation transformed into justice. The black man did not smile. He did not need to. He turned toward the glass doors of the conference room and stepped forward. This time, no one stood in his way. As he entered, his voice lingered behind like a verdict carved in stone. Racism does not stop billion-dollar deals, it ends careers.